might continue to eat away at.
Yeah, it's just temperatures are just marginal enough for cold. So, does that mean we're going to have an early spring or a late one? We're just days away from the moment where that giant furry rodent thing gives us his meteorological prognostication and obviously a run for our money here. Well, Punxsutawney Phil might be less accurate than a coin flip. He comes from a long line of hibernating forecasters that extend back to the medieval times. So how do we come to trust the gospel of Phil?
He might be the most famous rodent with the most dedicated fan base and inner circle.
Punxsutawney Phil, ladies and gentlemen.
His street cred has evolved far beyond the town of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, reaching international notoriety. And now, the day we let go of all meteorological morale and hypothetically trust this furry forecaster to do the job is upon us. Groundhog Day. And you might think Punxsutawney Phil is the OG flawed forecaster.
Hashtag 6 more weeks of winter.
But people actually were trusting rodents to forecast weather well before the prognosticator was even a groundhog. The real history of Groundhog Day predates its name. That's because medieval Europeans were relying on other furry friends. That's right, badgers had the job first. And also marmots and bears. The date February 2nd actually has meteorological significance in pagan history. It's the halfway point between the winter solstice and spring equinox. Medieval Christians rebranded this day as Candlemas, and while a rodent wasn't involved, they followed the same logic. If it was a nice day, you were stuck with winter, and if it rained, well, you're in luck for an early spring. But how could a lovely clear day be considered a bad omen? Well, that's rooted in traditional agricultural logic. The thinking a sunny day meant no moisture would be available for crops. You can thank Germans for adding animals into the mix. When early German settlers brought this folklore with them to Pennsylvania, they found themselves with limited fat squirrel-like options and settled for the groundhog. And around 1840, the practice of Groundhog Day was born, though the first official observance of the groundhog was in 1887 in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Back when they gathered at Gobbler's Knob, only to gobble him up afterwards. But thankfully, Punxsutawney Phil has reached too great of icon status to be considered for lunch anymore.
Let's go, Punxsy. Let's get nuts.
He's such a national treasure that other regional hogs like Staten Island Chuck and Oregon's hedgehog Fufu can only dream to reach his notoriety. Who the best meteorologist is remains a question, even though a coin flip would be more accurate than Punxsutawney Phil. He's only correct about 40% of the time. But that doesn't stop his posse of tuxedoed, top-hatted men who speak groundhogese, along with his national audience, from engaging in this age-old tradition.
6 more weeks. A beautiful spring it shall be.
Even if it's not grounded, groundhogged in scientific reason.
What a party. What a party. What a good time. Live coverage, of course, beginning on Thursday at 8. But before we get there, we want to talk a little bit about some of the, records that have gone on, because we have quite a data set here on Groundhog Day. 1988, 51 degrees. That was our warmest. 10 below back in 1976. We've had rain, we've had snow at times, nothing too extreme in both of those departments. And it looks like Friday morning there's a chance with partly sunny that we see a shadow or not. Trust me, I've been there enough times where sometimes I'm so surprised that the groundhog sees a shadow and sometimes it's not, especially when I can see mine. Sometimes I can't see mine, but that's another story. Notice again what we're talking about here, 2019 and 2020. We did not see a shadow, which is 2 years in a row, which was kind of amazing. And then the last year, 3 years, is more like how it usually goes, where the shadow is more prevalent. That's seen 107 times versus the 20 where we had no shadow. So who knows this year? I mean, you just never know. Either way you slice it, the groundhog is always right. Remember, guys, America's Morning Headquarters kicks off the main event on Friday morning. We're going to do stuff Thursday. We're also doing stuff Friday. We're going to start streaming at 5 on the Weather Channel app with meteorologists Alex Wilson and Jen Carfagno. A great time.
It's nothing.
Sounds like something.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, diarrhea.
Pepto-Bismol coats and